Another case that Justice Rosenberg dealt with this morning was Thomas Sofino, so I'm not going to get into that, only to say that it is an example of 4 independent witnesses identified Thomas Sofino. 4 independent witnesses. Then a Canadian case, the Hannemeyer case. In 1989, he was convicted of sexual assault of a child. The only witness was the mother of the child, who said she had a 60-second glimpse of Hannemeyer, of the attackers. She was convinced that it was him. She was so convinced and so confident in her testimony that she convinced everyone else. And even Hannemeyer felt he had no other option, so he pled guilty. She made an innocent man plead guilty because he felt he had no other choice. Everybody was so confident in what she had to say. Somebody else confessed to the crime. The mother still believed that Hannemeyer was the person she saw. Eventually, he was acquitted just last year, and Justice Rosenberg was on the panel that acquitted him finally after 9 years. So you can ask him about that later. Further evidence how we know we make mistakes is Justice Rosenberg referred to the DNA exonerations, how the Innocence Project in the US. So they've examined a number of the cases, the wrongful conviction cases. They've done post-conviction DNA testing. And to date, 239 cases of wrongful convictions have been overturned by the post-conviction DNA evidence. So, another audience participation. I don't think the clickers are going to work, so. Of the 239 cases overturned, what percentage was due to eyewitness identification? 42%, 54%, 61%, or 75%? So, number 1, 42%. 54%. 61%. And 75%. Okay, so the majority think it's 75% is correct. In fact, you are correct. 75% of all of the cases in the US that were overturned by the Innocence Project were due to eyewitness identification. 75% of the people of those 239 who were wrongfully convicted. These are huge figures. And this slide is just to show you that it's not often just one witness either. Of those cases, 62% was one witness, 25% 2 witnesses, and three or more witnesses. 13% of the people who were wrongfully convicted, had 3 or more witnesses wrongfully identify them. So a little more anecdotal evidence of how we know we make mistakes. I'm not sure if you're familiar with fillers. In a police lineup, you will have, okay, you're familiar, you'll have fillers who are known innocent people, and when the witness obviously identifies the known people, obviously we know there's a mistake. And also, witnesses sometimes select more perpetrators than actually committed the offense. And this little case here, just for fun, I put in to show you that this serious problem is well rooted in history. In 1796, Joseph Lasurques, he was accused of robbing a postal coach with 4 other people. 13 people were identified as robbers, 7 were executed. Some of them obviously innocently, there was only 5 robbers.
Por si acaso dos más. Por las dudas.
Okay, now some empirical evidence. Just going to talk about 3 studies. The first study, well, 2 of the studies actually talk about the effect of feedback. But the first study, so witnesses were shown a staged crime. They were asked to identify the culprit, but there was no culprit in the lineup. After they falsely identified someone, some of them were given positive feedback. Yes, that's right, the so-and-so identified him as well, you're right. And some of them were not given any feedback. Not surprisingly, those that were given feedback were more confident in their IDs. But the interesting part is those that were given feedback also exaggerated and distorted their view. They thought they had a better view, they reported a better view than they actually had. They reported having a better opportunity to see the culprit. Just because they were given that feedback, they themselves actually thought not only they were right, but they enhanced their ability of what they saw. In a similar type study, witnesses observed a staged crime, and half of them were told that the culprit was in the lineup, and half said he may or may not be in the lineup. Those that thought he was in the lineup, 78% falsely identified. Those that said may or may not be, there was only a 33% false identification. So when I get a little further in the presentation, I'm going to explain to you how we have guidelines that we suggest that that the person conducting the lineup should say the culprit may or may not be in the lineup. And you can see what an effect it will have. If they actually believe he's in the lineup, 78%. If they know that he may or may not be in the lineup, it dropped down to 33%. In the third and final study I'm going to talk about, it's just a short little, quick little, a female clerk was behind a sales counter. So she was selling something, the person was buying something from her, she ducked down for a second to pick something up, and when she came back up, it was actually somebody else, not her. And less than 50% of the people noticed that there was a different sales person. They thought it was the same person. And I guess that further demonstrates, you know, again, in your daily life, you don't notice those little simple changes. So I've talked a lot about all the mistakes and all the errors, but I guess what we really want to talk about, I mean, it's a very, very serious topic. There's been, you know, we've taken away the liberty of a lot of people because of the problems with eyewitness identification. So how we know the importance of witness testimony, so what can we do to make sure that we're dealing with the frailties? What can we do to make sure that the evidence is as reliable as possible?